Mm-hmm.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. My name is Martin Estrada. I'm the United States Attorney based in Los Angeles. We're here today with our law enforcement partners and civic leaders to announce the launch of a new multi-agency initiative to address human trafficking in our area. This initiative is known as the Figueroa Corridor Human Trafficking Initiative. Human trafficking is a global problem. It is estimated that it generates about $150 billion worldwide, and it victimizes about 25 million people around the world each and every year. But you don't need to look to some far-off country or continent to find human trafficking. It exists in its ugliest form right here in our own backyard in an area known as the Figueroa Corridor. The Figueroa Corridor is an area along Figueroa Street. It's about 3.5 miles, going from the north at Gage Avenue to the south at Imperial Highway. It's a short distance from downtown Los Angeles and just a stone's throw from USC. It's comprised of businesses and residences and home to many hard-working Angelenos. There are 23 churches in the area and 5 middle schools and elementary schools. But this area is also ground zero for human trafficking, where children and women are exploited and abused each and every day. Sex traffickers use violence, intimidation, and psychological abuse to take advantage of children and women. Many of these sex traffickers and pimps are members or associates of violent street gangs. Many of the victims are minors, children. In addition to the prostitution, these sex predators will often engage in child exploitation offenses such as production of child pornography. In addition, these sex traffickers will recruit victims from foster care, from group homes, recruiting them and grooming them to engage in prostitution. These victims are as vulnerable as it gets. Many of us here on stage, including myself, have gone on ride-alongs with the Los Angeles Police Department to see this area, particularly at night. Especially at night, this area becomes an outdoor bordello. What we see along the Figueroa Corridor is a human rights tragedy playing out each and every night. We see underage girls walking around in next to nothing, regardless of the weather, with pimps lurking nearby in cars supervising everything. We see a parade of cars with eager Johns slowly driving down the street looking to take advantage. For this reason, it's imperative that we take action to protect the victims. And that's what we're doing here today with the launch of this initiative, the Figueroa Corridor Human Trafficking Initiative. This initiative is an all-of-government approach to addressing this human trafficking problem. It combines the know-how of the LAPD, which patrols these streets, with the expertise of the FBI and Homeland Security Investigations, also known as HSI, which do these cases nationally. On the prosecution side, the District Attorney's Office, the City Attorney's Office, and my office, the United States Attorney's Office, will leverage all the tools at our disposal. My office will target the most serious offenders, particularly those offenses that involve minors, children. The District Attorney's Office has jurisdiction over prostitution offenses more generally. The City Attorney's Office can use civil tools to go after those who facilitate human trafficking, businesses such as motels. We are also incredibly grateful for the support we receive from civic leaders such as the Mayor, Karen Bass, thank you for being here.
Of course.
And from City Councilmember Marqueece, Harris-Dawson, in taking a comprehensive approach to addressing this problem. With this initiative, we're doing 4 specific things. First, we have been holding periodic meetings between my office, the DA's office, the LAPD, and our federal law enforcement partners to look at which cases can be prosecuted as felonies and which office should take the cases to get the maximum impact. Second, our attorneys have been conducting trainings with LAPD South Bureau to prepare a case federally so that we can bring federal charges. Third, the FBI, HSI, and my office are leveraging specific federal resources so we can target the worst offenders for federal prosecution. And fourth, we're coordinating with our fellow prosecutorial agencies, the City Attorney's Office, the District Attorney's Office, to make sure that what we are doing is having a maximum impact in the area. Let me talk about some of the work that my office is doing in this area. In the past 2 years, my office has prosecuted 13 defendants with human trafficking offenses. There are enhanced penalties where those cases involve minor victims. And this is part of our larger work addressing child exploitation in the region. We filed charges against 73 defendants with regard to child exploitation offenses. To give you a better idea of the human trafficking work that we're doing along the Figueroa corridor as a result of this initiative, I'm going to talk about 2 cases. In one recent case, United States v. Castillo, we filed charges against 2 defendants who filmed and photographed themselves sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl who lived in a group home. These defendants also talked about having the girl leave the group home and engaging in prostitution along the Figueroa corridor. They also discussed recruiting other girls from the foster care system to have them work as prostitutes along the Figueroa corridor. These defendants are now facing substantial federal charges. In another recent case, United States v. O'Neill, a defendant transported minors across state lines to engage in prostitution. He transported minors, including a 13-year-old girl, to act as prostitutes in the Figueroa corridor and also in Las Vegas. This defendant's tactics were brutal. Video footage showed this defendant yelling at the 13-year-old girl and intimidating her by taking away her shoes, her clothes, and her phone. This defendant is indicted federally and is facing substantial federal charges. When I talk about substantial federal charges, let me be clear about what I mean. Last year, we tried a case known as United States v. Bradford. This defendant would recruit girls from group homes, have them work as prostitutes along the Figueroa corridor and elsewhere. One of those children was a 15-year-old who said she wanted to stop. As a result, this defendant assaulted her. In addition, this defendant would create child pornography of himself having sex with some of the kids he'd taken from the foster care system. This defendant was tried, convicted, and sentenced and is now serving a life sentence in federal prison. And keep in mind, in the federal prison, there is no parole. These are the sorts of severe penalties that those engaged in human trafficking face in our system. Let me conclude. What we face along the Figueroa corridor is nothing short of a humanitarian crisis. Women and children being exploited each and every day in Los Angeles, one of the largest and most prosperous cities in America. The juxtaposition we see between privilege and misery is unacceptable, and therefore it's important we take action. With this initiative, the Figueroa Corridor Human Trafficking Initiative, we are doing just that. We're taking action to stop the human trafficking occurring in our own backyard and to protect our most vulnerable community members from further victimization. I want to thank the people on stage with me today and the agencies they represent, because this is truly a comprehensive, all-of-government approach. First, I want to thank our civic leaders, Mayor Karen Bass and Councilmember Marqueece Harris-Dawson, for supporting this in a comprehensive way. I want to also thank our law enforcement partners, the LAPD, the FBI, and HSI for the resources they're devoting to this initiative. I want to thank our fellow prosecutorial agencies, the City Attorney's Office, the District Attorney's Office, for using all their tools to make sure we address this grave problem. And finally, let me thank the prosecutorial team from my office, the Assistant United States Attorneys who've done these cases and will continue to do these cases. Those are AUSA's Kathy Yu, Kim Meyer, Chelsea Norrell, Claire Kelly, Danby Kim, and Kelsey Stimson. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Mayor of the City of Los Angeles, Karen Bass.
Good morning, everyone, and I just really want to thank you so much, our U.S. Attorney, for your leadership on this issue. Today, what you see is a comprehensive response, an all-in-government approach to successfully deal with a scourge on our society. For years, advocates, community organizations, and frankly, former foster youth have pushed for a change in the way this issue is thought of. This has been going on for many years, and the children that we are talking about today should never be referred to as prostitutes. Just think about it for a minute. If a child is under the age of consent, then how could that be prostitution? The leadership here today from law enforcement as well as political leaders show that society has changed, and this is a change that many of us have fought for many years. This problem also reflects a significant gap in the safety net that should be protecting the children. As was mentioned, many of these girls are from the foster care system, and just so people can understand what a group home is, a child who is in the foster care system is removed from their family because of abuse or neglect. Sometimes for many years they stay in a foster home. Oftentimes when they reach adolescence, they are moved into group homes. And what a group home is a private residence with an individual who is in charge of that private residence, and there might be from 4 to 6 children in that home, making them completely vulnerable to pimps who will lie to them, trick them, groom them, and the next thing they know, they are trafficked here in Los Angeles and trafficked around the country. This is something that we can absolutely address, and given the leadership here, I know that this is something that we can do. I've worked on this issue for many, many years in the community, in the state legislature, in Congress, and now back here as mayor of the city. And this street on Figueroa has been a problem for many, many years. And I'm just glad that we all have the leadership where we are aligned. We're aligned with the county. I want to specifically congratulate the county for their leadership in this issue with the Star Court, which is a specific court that takes care of children who are trafficked. And then I also want to thank the Los Angeles Police Department, and specifically the 77th Street Division, where the city attorney and I went out one evening, and I was just extremely proud to hear the officers refer to the children as trafficked and as victims. That is a cultural change. It's taken many years to get society to view view the girls as victims and not as criminals, and to understand that it is a failure of our society that this happens to begin with. And to see the Los Angeles Police Department congratulate and celebrate the fact that the week before we were there, they had rescued a 12-year-old girl. What is common is 12 years old is the common age that girls are brought into trafficking. And so today, with the launch of this effort, I know that we will be able to bring this scourge to an end. And I would like to now introduce our city attorney, who from day one, when she took over, made a commitment that this would be a priority of her administration, Hydee Feldstein Soto.
Thank you, Mayor Bass. Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much. First, I'd like to thank U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada for convening us and for his leadership on the federal felony prosecutions. It is the most effective tool that there is in anybody's toolbox to really hold these predators accountable. I'd like to thank Mayor Bass and Councilmember Harris-Dawson for their leadership from the beginning. Our very own LAPD, a special shout out to the 77th Street Station in the South Bureau, who has been working in this area for so long, for their outstanding commitment, their service, and their dedication that has had and will continue to have a tangible impact on what we see on Figueroa. And to all of the local, state, and federal justice partners from the county and from the federal government, the FBI, and DHS. So thank you. For too long, human trafficking has been a problem right here in our backyard. I didn't know that when I took office. I took office and I was invited on an LAPD ride-along as part of my campaign, and then Councilmember Harris-Dawson and Mayor Bass took me to Figueroa Street. The ride-along with the LAPD had been at night, and that was sort of appalling enough with this scene as U.S. Attorney Estrada described it. Various stages of undress. There was a kiddie stroll, that is the name of it, Kiddie stroll, specifically for the minors. What I didn't realize until Councilmember Harris-Dawson and Mayor Bass took me down to Figueroa Street is that this is a community of families. Mm-hmm. There are churches, there are schools, and in the daytime, it was nearly as bad. There were throngs of individuals in various stages of undress. There were cars coming by, and it was something that the kids had to get through to go to school and that families had to get through to go to work. And so, yes, we started trying to focus the resources of my office. What you see here is an interagency collaboration without which we will not get the results that we want. And so I thank the U.S. Attorney for launching this coordinated effort. But I also want to congratulate my office because we have had an intra-agency partnership to attack this problem. From my criminal branch led by Khalil Rashid on the prosecutorial side and Lara Drino, who's heading up the program Children Exposed to Violence and who partners with various service partners to get these kids to a safe place away from Figueroa Street. Just so everybody knows, we rescued 71 trafficked victims between July and December of 2023. 60 of them were minors. Between January and July of 2024, we have rescued 84 kids off that street, and we're on track to double that effort. So rescuing the kids is a big part of our focus. We have shuttered, I believe, 4 motels, and we have several others under conditions of operation, and many more with restrictions. We have required every motel to be in compliance with human trafficking signs with the national hotline. And as chief prosecutor for the city of LA, what I can do is prosecute misdemeanors committed by adults. A recent conviction in March was of a 49-year-old man who had basically been a John and a customer of a 14-year-old girl. And we convicted him. He's now on the sex offenders registry, and he's served time in jail and on probation. Our mission is to help our kids and the human trafficking victims disrupt the Johns along the kiddie stroll, stop the illegal activity in these motels and these other businesses that have become crime magnets, and yes, help our partners in holding the predators and the profiteers accountable. We also are working with the LAPD and with our social and civic leaders on environmental changes. So thank you to all of our partners here today, because the Figueroa Human Trafficking Initiative is already having an impact. The commitment to this work is palpable, and I look forward to a renewed partnership and a renewed commitment in the year ahead. With that, I'd like to call to the microphone our Los Angeles District Attorney, George Gascón.
Thank you, City Attorney, and thank you, Mr. Estrada, for your leadership in bringing this together, and for everybody else that is here. The Figueroa Human Trafficking Initiative represents an unprecedented collaboration between my office and everyone that is here today. We're pooling resources and expertise in order to ensure that we bring our best tools to the table and eradicating this problem. The goal is to dismantle trafficking networks, hold perpetrators accountable, and ensure that victims receive the support and justice that they deserve. This whole new government approach, along with community partners, includes regular meetings and collaboration, intelligence sharing, increased training, and joint enforcement actions. And I want to thank Guillermo Santizo, who is the head deputy of our sex unit, who has been instrumental not only in putting together our efforts, but providing training to law enforcement countywide, as well as Tanisha Williams, who runs our victim services unit. We have a specialized victim services representative that deals strictly with human trafficking. With this initiative, we're sending a clear message that human trafficking will not be tolerated in LA County. We're using every tool, and we will continue to do so. In my office, the efforts have resulted in 406 cases filed against perpetrators of human trafficking, pimping, and pandering since 2021. And just to give you some examples of what these cases look like, we have the case of People versus Drew. In this case, the defendant trafficked 2 juvenile victims during 2 separate 3-month periods. One victim was 15 years old and the other was 17 years old. The defendant also thought to dissuade the 17-year-old from cooperating with our office in the prosecution. We charged him with 2 counts of human trafficking, 1 count of dissuading a victim. He pled guilty earlier this year, and the court sentenced him to 14 years in state prison and having to register as a sex offender. Another case in the People versus Sandoval, 3 siblings trafficked 3 minors. One of the defendants sexually assaulted one of the victims, while another assaulted a victim to get her to engage in commercial sex. This case is still pending, but the maximum exposure for the defendants is respectively 110 years to life for one, 15 years to life for another, and 17 years and 4 months in state prison for the other one. And finally, one last example is People versus Davenport. The defendant in this case trafficked multiple victims and assaulted them, including branding the victims with his moniker on their face. We charge him with 2 counts of human trafficking of adults and 1 count of human trafficking of a minor and 1 count of pimping. A jury convicted the defendant of all counts in June. Sentencing will be later this month, and he faces multiple life sentence exposure. These are just a few of the examples of the 406 cases that I mentioned. But this initiative is not only about enforcement, it is also about empowering victims and providing ongoing trauma-informed care, ensuring that they receive the understanding, compassion, and justice that they need and deserve in order to heal. I'm grateful again to our prosecutors and Mr. Santizo for his work, and I'm very grateful for our Victim Services Unit, who is out there each and every day, often at hours of the night, in order to meet the victims where they are and ensure that they get the service that they deserve. And I want to thank everyone again for this collaboration. Thank you. Now I'm going to introduce Chief of Police of Los Angeles, Mr. Choi.
All right, thank you. As previously stated, the city of Los Angeles has been affected by the trafficking of women and children for decades. The Figueroa corridor has been a long-standing location for this activity, harboring violent crime and violent criminals, but also causing quality of life issues for the city. And with changing laws and with better insight into human trafficking, it became apparent that LAPD could not handle this issue alone, and we knew we couldn't arrest our way out of this problem. So earlier this year, we, the LAPD, along with the U.S. Attorney's Office, City of Los Angeles City Attorney, as well as the District Attorney, and various nonprofits, came together to develop a whole of government or holistic approach to improve the quality of life and to address the issues for those that live along the Figueroa corridor. I think you heard earlier, there are families and children that live there and they need to thrive there just like any other family in any other community. But an approach was developed, a 5-pronged approach that I call it. It included environmental design, victim resource and prevention, abatements, community engagement, and public safety. Operation South Bureau, 77th Division, some of the other divisions that were involved, Southeast Division, Southwest Division, Newton Division, which this Figueroa corridor runs through, conducted numerous rescue operations. They provided service to those victims being trafficked. And this was done through our partnerships with the Department of Children and Family Services, with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the FBI, HSSI, and various other nonprofit organizations for youth and adult victims. And although we arrested pimps in all these operations, our focus was really on rescuing victims, as you heard here by our other partners. Year to date, you've heard this, 84 victims, I'll say children, were rescued from human trafficking, the youngest being 11 years old. And mind you, put this in perspective, this is just along the Figueroa corridor. This is a humanitarian crisis because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of trafficked children around the world in this nation. So it's something we are focused on, and we need to stay focused on this. But to put that number in perspective, last year this time we had about 60 children that were rescued. So we are far surpassing our rescues from last year, and I'm happy about the work that we're doing. We also arrested 63 individuals for felony human trafficking and supervising. And each of these arrests, hours of investigative work and hard work goes into putting these cases together, not just for the arrest of the suspects, but for rescuing these victims. I want to thank our investigators, our nonprofits, our prosecutors, for truly being committed to stopping and impacting this issue. I want to thank Mayor Bass and Councilmember Harris-Dawson for their support and prioritizing this issue for the city of Los Angeles. Again, I talked about this is a humanitarian crisis, and we need to rescue more and more victims. To each prosecutor here standing here today and their offices, they put a stop to some of the most prolific pimps victimizing women and children and the communities where they're being trafficked. Our women, youth, and communities deserve better, and this is just the beginning of our focused, multi-agency effort, and I'm so proud of all the work being done here by all of our partners. And at this time, I'd like to introduce FBI Assistant Director in Charge, Akil Davis.
Thanks a lot, Chief. Good morning. I'm Akil Davis, the Assistant Director in Charge of the FBI's Los Angeles Field Division. I'm proud to be joined today by our investigative and prosecutive partners in this initiative targeting crime, specifically child crime, on the Figueroa corridor. The FBI is part of the Los Angeles community. Our employees live in the city and county of Los Angeles, and parents shouldn't have to walk their children to school and encounter commercial sex crimes and the trash that leaves behind. The FBI investigates over 1,000 cases of human trafficking annually. Part of this effort involves our Victim Services Division, which is a victim-centered approach to these cases and has played a critical role in providing support and resources to support the victims, specifically the child victims of this type of heinous crime. Tips involving children in trafficking situations should be submitted through NCMEC, which you've heard earlier, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's cyber tip line, or call 1-800-THE-LOST. You can also report any suspicious activity or violent behavior to the FBI at 1-800-CALL-THE-FBI. We will continue to work with our law enforcement partners and free law-abiding citizens to rescue those being tormented by this crime. I want to thank all of my partners here again today. You are going to see significant results from this effort immediately. Thank you, and now I'll turn it over to HSI Special Agent in Charge, Eddy Wang.
Good morning. My name is Eddy Wang, and I'm the Special Agent in Charge for HSI Los Angeles. I want to thank you all today for coming and once again shining a spotlight on this stain on society. As you heard earlier, human trafficking generates approximately $150 billion in illicit proceeds annually throughout the world. But what that figure doesn't account for is the cost to the victims. And that's why HSI deploys a victim-centric approach when it comes to trafficking, where we place equal emphasis on the identification, rescue, and stabilization of the victims, as we do on the criminal investigation and prosecution. Through our dedicated cadre of victim assistance and forensic interview specialists, HSI partners with non-governmental organizations to ensure that we're providing all victims with safe and secure environments throughout their restorative justice process. On the enforcement front, HSI Los Angeles dedicates a significant amount of resources towards combating human trafficking here locally. We collaborate with the United States Attorney's Office, the LAPD, and the FBI to target the most egregious human trafficking violations in the city. HSI Los Angeles is the lead federal sponsor for both the Los Angeles Regional Human Trafficking Task Force, led by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force, led by the Anaheim Police Department. We also work with the Riverside County Sheriff's Department's Human Trafficking Task Force, as well as partnering with the United States Marshals Service to recover missing and endangered children that could be potential trafficking victims. With all that said, and some of the recent successes discussed by the partners here today, there's much more work to be done, because in 2024, no human should be for sale. Mm-hmm. Not in Los Angeles, not in the United States, not anywhere around the globe. Now, it's my sincere hope that one day in the not too distant future, we won't have to have press events like this to raise awareness on trafficking, because that will mean that we've rescued and cared for every victim and delivered consequences to every perpetrator. So to help us achieve that lofty goal, we're going to need more involvement from the community. If you witness a human trafficking emergency, please contact 911. To report suspicious or suspected human trafficking activity, contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888 or the HSI tip line at 1-877-447-4847. So until that day comes where we eradicate trafficking as we know it today, HSI Los Angeles and our law enforcement, prosecutorial, and non-governmental organization partners will continue to work tirelessly to identify and rescue every victim that we can reach and hold every trafficker accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Thank you. Oh, excuse me. And now I'd like to introduce the Chief of Staff for LA City Councilmember, Marqueece Harris-Dawson, Joanne Kim.
Good morning. I'm Joanne Kim, Chief of Staff for Councilmember Marqueece Harris-Dawson, who represents the neighborhood where this coordinated intervention is taking place. We are truly grateful for the leadership and work of all of our partners here for escalating the work to protect our young victims and the surrounding neighborhoods of the Figueroa corridor. We need each and every one of these partners we have to break up every part of this economic ecosystem that enables a 24-hour-a-day violence and exploitation, and to end sex trafficking once and for all on the Figueroa corridor. Prior to becoming an elected official, as a community organizer, Councilmember Harris-Dawson stood side by side with community residents to pressure city officials to hold accountable those who are profiteering off the trafficking of our girls and young women and wreaking havoc on this neighborhood. For over 30 years, the community has worked tirelessly to clean up and close down problem motels, work with law enforcement to identify the sex workers who were victims, not criminals, and to identify and prosecute the true perpetrators and profiteers of what is going on. As a result of community organizing and having dedicated public servants at the city, county, state, and federal levels to date on the Figueroa corridor and the surrounding South LA neighborhoods, we have closed over a dozen of the most egregious motels and place stringent corrective conditions on over a dozen more. We have initiated the community with the LAPD, the Community Safety Partnership down the street in the Algin Sutton Park neighborhood, where LAPD officers work hand in glove with gang interventionists, community and faith leaders, and community organizations. Organizations like Sista Friends, forgotten children, who are both focused on our most vulnerable victims and who deserve all of our support here. Along with Community Coalition and the KIPP Academy down the street with its students, teachers, and families who organize and advocate for a neighborhood that's safe for everyone and who hold all of us public servants accountable. On a personal note, I have witnessed for multiple decades, personally witnessed and worked to address for multiple decades the problems on Figueroa. And I have never known this level of coordination with this many agencies working together with the community. And I believe with what we have here, we can and we will end sex trafficking in the Figueroa corridor. Thank you.
Thank you very much.